imagine one of the reasons why people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense once the hate is gone, they'll be forced to deal with their pain. The powerful words of James Baldwin. And just feel into that. I'd love to present to you Ahimsa, the very first foundational principle of yoga. Traditionally, this is translated so often as do no harm, even that memory or remembrance of another paradigm, do not kill. But number one, I think that having a threshold of do not kill, we can do better than that. Yes, this is way more than just not harming somebody to the extent of violence to that degree. So another way to translate this is non-violence and non-harming, which I think goes further than do not harm for certain. But I'd love for us to consider the kind of behavior we're actually promoting, which is kindness, which is love. Love itself is the very foundational principle of yoga. But too often in this world, we see people caught up in cruelty and violence and destruction and harming other people. So this is why we practice yoga. It's a form of sacred activism. It's not just not to harm ourselves and our thoughts and our words and our actions, and not to do harm to other people, but it's also to stand up for the rights of everyone around us and to say that no one deserves to have cruelty or violence done to them. It could even then be interpreted that there is in our power and our responsibility to do no harm to all life, not just an ecocentric view of human life, but to all life in general, to the plant people, to the rock people, to the animal people. That this too is a practice of ahimsa. And so how can we be more kind? How can we be more peaceful, more benevolent, more loving towards all living creatures and with which we share this beautiful spaceship of Earth? Well, therein lies the practice. And it begins with us. How we speak to ourselves is how we speak to other people. How we treat ourselves will be how we treat other people. If we're super self-critical and destructive towards ourselves, we will certainly push that upon other people because we will behave in terms of what we know. And if that's what we're teaching ourselves and that's what we know, then that becomes our normal state. Or maybe there's a social conditioning that the behavior towards one group of people, maybe people like me, like BIPOC people, immigrant people, that we can mistreat them, that they're invisible, that they're worth less or worth nothing and worthless completely. Or we can look at a group of people and say we should treat them equally. They should be the same as us, no matter the color of their skin or who they choose to love, but that we should treat everyone with the same honor and respect, kindness, and love. So these are the sacred principles of yoga, this activism that asks us to stand up for ourselves and to stand up for those that are maligned, that we see around us, those that don't even have a voice to stand up for themselves, or due to systemic racism and sexism and misogyny that need support from everyone so that everyone can stand up for the rights of those that simply don't have that strength, that power, or that place in society to have a platform to stand up for themselves. So think about the meaning of ahimsa, and do you believe that if you're not doing the harming, if you're not participating in derogatory language towards those that have a different color skin than you, then all right, I'm practicing ahimsa. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. Is that enough? Well, to apply this from a yogic perspective, it's not. It's not enough to say that I'm not contributing to the violence or to the cruelty, because by not doing anything, that too is a cruel action. It's not enough, according to yoga, to just stand back and just watch other people being harmed just because you aren't the one that's causing the violence or doing the harming. This is the principle that Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and so many amazing activists throughout time have used as a foundational construct to bring about change in this world, to bring about peace, to wake people up to what's possible as human creatures, and that we can do better than what we've been doing. And then we can even do better than that. For that the world that we leave our children's children is being decided today. And that this ancestral pain and wounding and aggression and microaggressions no longer need to continue if we decide as a collective of billions of yogis to make a change right now and to really practice ahimsa in the way that it was intended. But why do people not practice ahimsa? That's an interesting question as well. Fear. Fear that if I do treat other people equally, then something will be taken away from me. If I treat others with respect and I acknowledge that they too have talent and abilities, then my job is at risk. Then they're going to come at me. These fears aren't grounded in reality, but that doesn't make them really dangerous. And when you have people in leadership referring to me as an animal, well, then now we start to create a paradigm. If you call me an animal over and over and over, you may start to believe, if you're hearing that often enough, and especially from somebody in authority, you may actually start to believe that I'm an animal and that I have no worth and that I should be gotten rid of or I should be destroyed. So think about then what you need to do based in these fears that are unjust and not based in reality. What can you do to face that fear in your family, to face that fear in your coworkers, to face that fear maybe even in yourself? What if everybody was equal? Would that truly take away something from you? And is the fear strong enough that you don't want to even try? And so you will do everything in your power to maintain the cruelty and the systemic violence that exists against those that may not fit the one white-centered way, this colonial mindset. So this is, in ahimsa, an opportunity to decolonize the mind, to decolonize yoga. For yoga in modern day, it wasn't like this. It has become more and more and more and more white-centered and colonial-minded and exclusionary. We do harm when we don't make the yoga available to everyone. We do harm when even the economics of taking a yoga class are $20, $25 online, in person. We're basically saying, you guys can't do yoga. I can't pay that much money to take a yoga class. So now you've excluded me. And is that fair? is that kind, is that loving. So if you believe that you have to wear $110 yoga pants to go to a studio to take a yoga class and pay that $20, $25, and with like a $50 top and your $30 water bottle, then truly the economics are playing against most people. And now we've made the yoga not harmless but harmful because we're limiting it to the top 5% of humans, those that have the most money and privilege. And that's a problem. And that's something that has evolved in the last 20 years that I've been teaching. It wasn't like this when I started. It wasn't even this bad 10 years ago. But it's progressively, instead of getting better, and yogis making the world better, it's actually gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's been powered and promoted through the yogic structure in a very white wellness world. For those of you that have never paid attention or noticed, one, I'm probably going to be, for most of you, like 99%, the very first BIPOC teacher you've ever had. Maybe I'll be the second. But I'm accustomed to being the only presenter at a conference, the only person of color on a studio schedule. I'm actually absolutely oftentimes the only BIPOC taking a class as a student. And so consider how that would make you feel if you're constantly the only one, because the yogic structure has become so exclusionary and harmful when it should be an equal playing ground for all. How often does your yoga studio look the same as the street that you just walked in from? I know that living in Seattle, I would come from the street at the Starbucks, like 2 doors down, and it would be like normal city street. And then I'd go into the studio and whoosh, it would be a complete whitewash. So how often does that happen? Where even on the street where we could be integrated and we could be welcoming, it's just not. And how often has your yoga studio been less than friendly and welcoming and kind and loving to the LGBTQ community? What steps are you taking to welcome your LGBTQ friends into the practice, to have like a yoga friend date and say, hey, come with me. I'll be that buffer. Let's go to class together. Because that too is an experience of standing up for other people. It's not an inactive experience, ahimsa. Ahimsa requires action. It requires us to do something. So think about the fears that people are under that create illusions of separation, which is the root cause of all suffering, yoga teaches us. And now it's a dualistic experience of us against them, and we otherize all the people around us that don't look exactly like us or have the economic structure that we have. When we otherize, we create separation. And the word yoga means to yoke, to connect, to link together. It doesn't mean to separate and to eliminate and to limit others. Cruelty can be very violent in obvious ways, but it's the more insidious ways that it can be equally or even more powerfully violent. It's the microaggressions and the accumulation of the microaggressions that then add up. If you meet me and you say, hello, what's your name? And then I say, Catalina. That's a weird name. Gosh, why is it so weird? You know? How do you say that name? Is there another name? You know, I'd love to call you. Can I just call you Cat? Can I just call you Cat? No, you cannot. Removing my entire cultural identity is a form of cruelty. You didn't hit me on the head. You didn't hold a knife to my throat. I understand that, but you're still trying to eliminate me, make me invisible, and make me more comfortable for you because I'm different. I have a cultural name. So think about all the yogis that want to come to class, but even just that initial question, hey, hello, what's your name? And your potential response could be off-putting. That too creates an atmosphere that doesn't feel safe. As teachers of yoga, we are meant to create a safe environment first and foremost for everyone, for everyone. And that safe environment means that there's a sense of stability and continuity. There's a lovingness, there's a kindness, there's acceptance. For me, I would say there's also unconditional love. You don't have to wear $110 Lululemon pants for me to accept you. No, it's unconditional. You don't have to be able to do the most complicated poses. Walk in with a cane and you are fully accepted and loved and appreciated by me. I've had students that are blind. I've had students that are disabled throughout the years, and they have felt a comfortable space to come and do the practice. So that there's somebody with a chair and somebody near a wall and somebody on a mat, and that all those people with differing abilities can practice this beautiful yogic form of promoting peace and kindness and love in the world. And just because the outside form of the pose doesn't look the same, well, are we trying to fit the people to the poses or the pose to the person? If you're trying to fit people to poses and force them to conform into whatever idea you might have is the one right way, then that's not practicing ahimsa. That too is cruelty. That too is harming and harmful. But if you're fitting not the person to the pose, but the pose to the person, adapt it, make it available to each and every person to the level of ability that they have in this moment. Tomorrow will be a new day. Now we're practicing ahimsa. And if we promote to our students that the concept of the full expression is the one right way, and we'll clap and cheer for you if you do this full expression, that's also harming. Full expression is an interpretation. Really, that's just a bias, and it's an ableist bias. So when we are racist or sexist or ableist in the way that we create our yoga spaces, you can't even walk into the studio unless you are able to walk in and you're athletic and an amazing health. Well, I came to yoga after being in a hit and run. I did not aspire to do a wheel pose or a handstand or anything ridiculous, put my foot on my head. I wanted to put my underwear on by myself. I wanted to brush my teeth by myself at the age of 25. I wanted to do normal things. And so if that was your threshold, you would have eliminated me, and I would not have been able to even begin the practice of yoga as an adult. And I would not have had this medicine that I needed for my recovery and my resiliency training. All yoga is trauma-informed yoga. We don't have to have special classes. If we're really practicing Ahimsa, the foundational principle of yoga, all classes, trauma informed, all sorts of trauma, not just physical. So thinking about the poses that you choose and the way you choose them and the way that you theme and what you say and how you make people feel. If you can't do level 2, then you just stay here. If you're not good enough, stay right there in that pose. We're going to come right back and we're going to go on. Those are violent words and microaggressions that people can really feel and they'll take with them. It may seem like there's nothing wrong with saying that, but there's better ways to communicate the opportunities for exploration in the poses. Not making it belittling people or making them feel bad if they can't do level 28 in a pose. I also want you to think about all the brothers and sisters and two spirits that have had sexual trauma. One of the poses that I choose not to include in my repertoire of 3 million poses, so that I have like 2,900,999 instead, is Happy Baby. I'm not saying you have to remove Happy Baby. I'm just saying that for me, that vulnerability is not something that I need to include in my classes because I don't want to re-trigger someone's sexual trauma. I don't want to re-trigger a feeling of force. So I don't do it. I'm very careful because, like I said, I really believe all yoga is trauma-informed yoga if we're staying true to the real yogic practice and to the roots of yoga and what's intended. So doing away with this white-centric yogic practice, the ableist yogic practice, the sexist yogic practice, the racist yogic practice, and the ageist yogic practices, where how often do you see a magazine cover with a 75-year-old? Truly, think about it. When's the last time you saw a yoga magazine or one of the biggest top 10 Instagram accounts with a 75-year-old, a 55-year-old, a 65-year-old? Or are those that are most popular like the 22-year-old size 2? That person that's 100 pounds, very thin frame. Nothing wrong that that's their body, but if that's only visuals that we see in the yoga world, the 22-year-old in this tiny little body, then it is ageist. If you look around in a class and you're like, wow, there is nobody over the age of 40 in this class, and everybody's like 22 to 25, what are we not doing to make the atmosphere more welcoming to all ages? And if you're saying, yeah, but like, you know, a 65, 55-year-old, they can't do what I can do at 22, really? Or is that just an idea? Is that idea a discrimination, which is a form of violence? And certainly not in alignment with Ahimsa. I know many of 55, 65, 75-year-old that have incredible, strong yogic practices, strong in mind and body and heart and soul, way stronger and more advanced than the 22-year-old, based in awareness. And then when it comes to that size, if we show that there's only one body type that is allowed in yoga, welcomed in yoga, that is held up and esteemed in yoga, when we don't see ourselves in a place, we don't feel welcomed. That's how the human brain works. If you never see yourself, somebody that looks like you, you're like, ah, this isn't for me. It doesn't feel that safe. So can we make our spaces more welcoming to all sizes, to the Rubenesque figure? The tagline for my studio in Chicago that was called Total Body Yoga was yoga for every body. Everybody. No matter who you were, what your balance sheet said, how old or young you were, what you were able to do or not able to do, any religion, any race, any ability, anything, and you are welcomed. And that is the secret to why I had over 9,000 students in 10 years. I made sure to practice Ahimsa. And I hired people that taught from a place of Ahimsa. And it gave people a reason in the community to come back and come back and come back again and again. For we were a healing center, a community center where everyone could gather and feel really safe and loved, accepted, and even appreciated. So I hope that this has given you more to think about in terms of Ahimsa and how you live your life and the kind of teacher that you want to be, and also equally the kind of student you want to be. When you take a class and you're seeing injustice, you're seeing yogis behaving badly, what can you do? We've all had that opportunity where the class is getting full, your mat is next to someone else's, and somebody comes in and they need a place. And you can see people literally pull away, look away, and protect their mat real estate. I'm not going to give up any of this. When all anyone has to do is move their mats 2-3 inches. And if everybody does that in a row, that little tiny bit, we make space to include someone else. It's not only the teacher's responsibility to create a safe space, it's yours as a student as well. It's all of ours together. Every time you look at an advertisement and you make a purchase from that company that's promoting a one-size-fits-all, then you're saying that's okay and they get stronger. But you can use your yoga dollar in another way that doesn't promote cruelty, that doesn't promote this exclusionary experience, that doesn't discriminate. You can be political and show where you care by the brands that you invest in the yoga world and in the studios in which you take classes or the teachers you participate with online. So there are ample opportunities in the yoga world to practice Ahimsa. And then what we practice on the mat, we take off the mat, and may we practice it in the whole of the world. May we be the light workers, every single one of us as students and teachers that come to the mat to replenish the light within. May we be that light worker that goes out into the world and makes the light spread out and touch everyone we work with and those in our homes, and bring a sense of Ahimsa, of peace and love everywhere we go. Isn't that what it really means to be a yogi? I'd like to think so. From my heart to your heart, to the heart of the universe, may you love yourself, love your day, and love your life. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. 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 May all beings everywhere be happy, healthy, peaceful, loved, and free from suffering. And may my actions in some way contribute to the health, happiness, peace, love, and freedom from suffering for all.